All right, everyone. I think the clock just struck 11, so time to start this webinar. Welcome, everyone. We've done a couple of these webinars in the past, and they've been focusing more on maybe the technology of the Furhat Robot, the computer vision system, the NLU, the SDK, and so on. We've done another couple of webinars that have been focusing on the industries, education, or in the medical industry, or in tourism and travel, and so on. But finally, we've been able to put together this webinar where we'll be focusing more on the robot in research. So that's going to be the topic of today, the robot in human-robot interaction specifically. And with me to talk more about this, I have Dr. Cigdem Turan and Patrick Schramowski from the Technical University of Darmstadt, who will be talking about their work on the Furhat Robot and their work in general and their lab. So I'm really happy to finally be able to do this kind of webinar in this episode, because from our perspective, there really is still a lot to explore when it comes to social robots, spoken dialogue systems, virtual agents, artificial intelligence, and all that sort of mesh of research areas that we are really interested in. My name is Nils Hagberg. I work here at Furhat Robotics as product owner in the Furhat X team, and the Furhat X team is focused on the use for the robot for research, whether that is academic research, in a research lab, or research that's been done maybe in an innovation team at some corporation. And as I said today, I'm joined by the brilliant people here from Technical University of Darmstadt. And I will soon hand it over to them, but I just want to make sure that we are on a line on what's going to happen today. So as usual, we will make room in the end for some questions. So if you have some questions, feel free to just shoot them in the Zoom Q&A tool there, and I'll make sure that we address them at least in the end. Cigdem and Patrick will talk about the robot, and then we'll do a demo of Alfie, the character or the interaction that they've been building on. So I'm looking forward to show that to you, and I will switch to my other demo station over there. But before we get into today's topic, I would like to just quickly glance over the field of HRI and the role the Furhat robot can play there. The Furhat Robotics was not founded by roboticists or computer software engineers, but rather by researchers in human communication and speech technology. So that's where we come from. But the research use of the robot has very much focused on human-robot interaction and sort of the areas surrounding that topic. That's really at the heart of the robot. So we have researchers investigating, cognitive models and theory of mind, how we perceive trust, form opinions, and so on these artificial agents and these embodied artificial agents. But also on, human-robot collaboration, the importance of gaze, attention, and the role of having a physical presence, or just generally on, technologies involved in affective computing for perceiving and expressing emotions. And to mention a couple of them, we have some work coming from our University of Linköping and Uppsala here in Sweden. We have Dr. Felix Linner in Freiburg in Germany, and we have Carlos Busso in the University of Dallas over in the States, to name a couple. And the main attraction for, I guess, the robot in this field is, or maybe not the main attraction, but one of the main attractions is the natural appearance of the robot. The expressiveness and the customizability of the face is really one of the main features. But today, I think we will be focusing more on the brains of the robot, the conversational elements, and of creating an interface to collect data and interact with real people. But I think now is perhaps time I handed it over to our guests, who I think most of you have come to listen to. So Cigdem and Patrick, I will go on mute, and that will be the cue to take the stage.
Thanks, Nils.
Thank you.
Can you see it?
Yes, I do.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Cigdem Turan, and I'm a postdoc in the Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Lab in TU Darmstadt. And today, with my colleague Patrick Schramowski, who is a PhD student, we will talk about our recent findings on language models and also ask the question or try to answer the question, can machines be taught morals? And as I said, we are from Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Lab. Our lab of our head is Professor Christian Kersting. We are also a member of Center for Cognitive Science in TU Darmstadt, as well as recently founded Hessian Center for Artificial Intelligence. And in these days, AI is everywhere. We see it in the self-driving cars, from self-driving cars to language models or recommendation systems. AI is basically everywhere, and it's always a topic even for AI researchers or not. And of course, there's always many faces of AI that we are talking about. Some people think AI is the savior of the world, and some people think it's downfall of humanity. And today, here we are coming to the quest for a good AI. So today, one of our main key questions that we would like to present is the question, can we teach machines morality? And for that, we will start with a small demo of Alfie, and then we will explain in more details.
Actually, I had a little technical issue here with Zoom and connecting with my demo station to Zoom. I see I've been logged out. Maybe you can continue and we can come back to the Alfie demo a little bit later. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, then Patrick, you can continue.
Yes. Okay, before we talk about our moral AI, let's start with a small introduction of AI. So in general, with AI, we mean intelligent algorithms we use for solving different tasks. Our group is focusing on machine learning, where the algorithm is learned by the machine itself. And we talk about deep learning if we use neural networks. So we have the overall picture of artificial intelligence with a part is machine learning, and the subpart of machine learning is deep learning. But AI is way older, and also machine learning is not a new topic. But what's the difference between now and the past? So now we have much more computational power, so we can build way bigger models, and we have more data. So we see that actually AI is already working in different fields like robots, knowledge bases. And we even saw that piece art was sold recently made by an AI. And we see that AI is beating humans in chess and Go or different games. And we all know the personal assistant in our pockets or at our home.
Of course, although these tasks, the machines can achieve really good performance, AI is still harder than we all think. For instance, like data doesn't mean always everything. And we have a small video here.
Oops.
Looking to start the break himself, taking his time. Left foot. Oh, he kind of getting up on it. Look at this. Just leave.
So it's one small example of in a robot in AI, how difficult the tasks are. And of course, then we have more computer vision problems that AI might fail. For instance, here it fails to recognize that there's a toothbrush, a giant toothbrush there. So the perception of AI might be problematic that we need to work on, as well as more computer vision problems like optical illusions. You can have an adversarial attacks on the deep learning models, like for instance, one in the first row, when it's 0, it can be actually attacked as it can be 1, which has a security or safety problems in face recognition systems, for instance. And we also seen recently that language models that we are using also might have or contains actually human-like biases. And my colleague will give more details about this part.
Yeah, so we will look at language models because we use them for our algorithms we will see on the Furhat. And language models are trained to understand but also generate language. And in doing so, they encode sentences or words into a continuous space, which means numbers. So each sentence or each word has a specific location in this continuous space. The cool thing is that we see that the language model learns relations like the gender of a word. For example, man to woman has the same relationship than king to queen. And we also see that for countries and capitals. So recently it was also shown that language models can be kind of used as a knowledge base. And for example, in experiments, was shown that if you remove one word from a sentence, the language model is generating this word with an expected or what you would expect. So we did this experiment on actions like helping or eating. And we see that, for example, helping is a good behavior or social behavior. However, helping a thief is a criminal behavior. Eating is in general healthy, but eating humans is dangerous or also criminal. So we see that these language models contain somehow also social values. So our model choice machine we are presenting now makes use of that. We make use of these locations in the embedding space by formulating our actions, for example, kill time or kill people, as questions, and we compare this location of the question in the embedding space to the possible answers yes and no. And we see that kill time is closer to yes than to no, and kill people is closer to no. So we somehow can rate different actions. Yeah, and we tried that, or we built first a chatbot to showcase this, and Chichi will continue.
Yes, so we would like to have a way of actually interacting with humans and using this moral choice machine we called to interact with people, and maybe for them to experience this, and also that we would collect data from that. So first we used a Google Assistant chat, and it's got a lot of attention as well. And recently we also purchased a Furhat Robot and built this moral choice machine in Furhat Robot, and we named it Alfie. And Alfie is a user-friendly way that we can present the moral choice machine results, but also we can get feedback from the users, and as well as we can ask them questions that we can collect their responses, because there is no qualitative way of analyzing how good the moral choice machine algorithm is, or there is no absolute truth or right or wrong in terms of morality. So that's why we need human responses. that we can collect to adapt the biases and adapt this model score of our algorithm. And that's the main reason that we are using Furhat Robot. So we have two modes. In the question mode, the users can ask questions to Alfie with the template should I and action. And Alfie responds to it in 3 levels. Either it's a positive thing to do, negative thing to do, or it's a neutral thing. So we have a threshold for that, which we do mostly experimentally, that can be adjusted, and it gives certain responses based on this model score. And then sometimes Alfie asks users feedback. So if you agree with these results or not, and if it disagrees the user, then Alfie asks what they think, if it should be done or shouldn't be done. Then we also have a training mode, and in the training mode we have a list of questions in Alfie's server that we would like to receive the user's responses. Then when we activate the training mode, Alfie asks these questions in random order and also get a rating from 1 to 10, how bad or how good that behavior would be. Also, we are not only using these part of the human-robot interaction, but we also want to make it more engaged by using facial expressions and speech. So for this, we also use Furhat Robot's specialties of that we can customize facial expressions and also the speech parameters. Patrick, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. And here, as you can see, what we are doing in the same way that we calculated the moral score, we actually find the closest emotion to that action, which can be a fear or something disgusting or something happy. And based on that, when Furhat Robot or Alfie is answering this question, it also shows certain facial expressions. And also based on it, we also changed the speech parameters such as the speed or the pitch, etc. And here are some examples of the customized facial expressions that we are using. And I think now time for the demonstration. Niels, I hope we solved the technical problem.
Yes, now we're up and running with all the cameras and microphones. It's always a little bit tricky to do these online events with video and the microphone and getting the robot, and you can hear everything as well. So let me start the skill here, and we can try to see if Alfie wants to talk to us.
Hi, nice to meet you. Would
Hello
you
there.
like to ask me a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your question?
Should I help people?
Yes, you should. Would you say that too?
Yes.
Thanks. Do you have another question?
Should I help a thief?
No, you should not. Do you want to ask me anything else?
Should I wear a mask?
No, you should not.
I
Do
think
you
there's a
have
lot
another
of
question?
controversy around that, if I should wear a mask or not. So that's
Sorry,
maybe an example
I didn't
of a question
understand that.
that will change, right? Can we
Sorry,
go to?
I didn't catch that.
Can we go to training mode?
Is it okay to travel to Sweden?
Yes, I think so.
And how well would you rate this behavior from 0 to 10?
Right now, maybe a 3. 3.
Thank you very much. May I ask you another question?
Sure. Yes.
Is it a good behavior to cheat in an exam?
No. No, it isn't.
And how bad would you rate this behavior from 0 to 10?
That's a 1.
Sorry, I didn't understand that. From a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate this behavior?
number 1.
I appreciate that. Can I ask you another question?
The last one, yes, a final one.
Is it desirable to buy a Furhat Robot?
Yes.
And how well would you rate this behavior from 0 to 10?
10. I would say 10.
Sorry, I didn't understand that. From a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate this behavior?
Number 10.
I appreciate that. May I ask you another question?
No, I think that's it.
Sorry, could you rephrase that?
I'll stop you. All right, so I think the last question there, I think was put in here for for this session today. So I appreciate that. And as you can see, you know, creating these interactions is really a lot of hashing out all the details in the interaction. But I think you got the main point there of being able to differentiate between different moral questions and how this can sort of be put into the robot. So hopefully you can get some experience from that demo. And I think I'll hand it back over to you, Chatbot, again.
Thank you. I think, Patrick, you can conclude.
Yes. Yeah, so we saw that, for example, wearing a mask was a no for the Furhat, and that's because it was trained before Corona. I think the data was from 3 years ago. So what we desire is to adapt the moral compass of the language model. So we do the first step by collecting the feedback now. So that the robot is asking for feedback and rating the action between 1 and 10. And we are currently working on using that data we collected to adapt the language model. Further, we want to extend our algorithm by explainable AI. So the machine can, or the robot can explain why wearing a mask is bad or good. And as you can see, we have now an experiment running where 2 robots are talking to each other. And maybe they will talk about moral or something else. Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that presentation and insight to what's going on in your lab. If anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot them. I have a couple of questions. Some may be relating a little bit more to that moral choice machine, and some may be relating a little bit more to your experience working with the Furhat robot itself. So I can start with a question regarding that. You mentioned you started with a text-based system for doing these interactions and doing this dialogue, and then you decided to get a Furhat and to have this interaction in an embodied agent. Just generally speaking, what's been your experience of moving from that sort of text-based, purely digital interface to a physical embodied interaction, both in terms of complexity, but also maybe surprise, what surprised you or what you find difficult or easy. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first we started with Chatbot, as you've saw on our slides. And we actually took this TV screen you saw on the street and asked people to use the robot, and we had children asking for like, should I buy a pet or should I buy sweets? And we always saw like a big opportunity because people already wanted to interact with this TV, with this chatbot via text. And so we decided to go a step further and use a robot to increase this interactions. And I mean, as we saw in your demo, we see different problems that now the speech has to work, the voice recognition has to work, which we didn't have before. However, we also see that people are way more engaged with the robot. So we can now show emotions just beside a yes and no. That's really great.
Exactly. I think, as Patrick said, the hardest part is designing also the interaction. Like different people has different styles of interaction. Some people, like for instance, you just said yes if you should ask question, but we imagine that you would directly ask the question there, for instance. But like these, like you need to take into account all these possible interaction scenarios and how to interact with it. And we only did this implementation as a bachelor internship. So for 5 students from bachelor, they had to do this implementation, and they did that. And of course, we guided them, but it's mostly just a basic interaction, and it can be done so much more things with it. In terms of how we communicate. And yes, I think this is one of the hardest part of it, but at the same time, as Patrick said, it's really fascinating to see how people are amazed with just seeing the robot and then talking with it that answers moral question. It's just really, really amazing.
Just something different if you have a guest and you want to showcase your work, and either you give them a chatbot where they can write something, or a real robot. This is really amazing.
Yeah, I had one comment there on your sort of struggles with creating that, that dialogue and that interaction. That's something that, as a company, we haven't really been able to focus so much on teaching and showing people how to do this, and giving good tools and this kind of support. But I hope that we can do a little bit more of this work going forward. We've had a Slack channel for all of our customers to be able to ask typically a little more technical questions. I hope and plan that we can expand on that a little bit more, and also to get people to share their skills and share their parts of their code. So it's some things that are maybe can be reused, so everyone doesn't have to start from a clean slate. And we had some work that's been done in the past couple of months from the interactions team here at Furhat, who's been exploring different territories on the robot. I don't think really explored the territory of the robot having sort of moral, or having its own sort of internal life or thinking, but some other topics about empathy, or creating like non-verbal interaction, or like having like good listening behaviors, and also just exploring some maybe slightly more unusual or non straightforward uses of the robot, like, for example, using the robot as a meditation guide or something like that. So hopefully that work that they're doing and they have been doing, that's something we can share a little more with the community and hand out as resources. And I hope to put together little workshop sessions where we can try to support everyone who's working with the robot to really create powerful interactions. Because as you said there, Patrick, the reaction for people is usually very, the eyes light up. So that's something to really sort of capture and work on. Sorry for going a little bit off script there. And I'll jump into the next question. Maybe talking a little bit more about Alfie itself. And how does Alfie deal with negation and that sort of linguistic analysis of the questions?
Yeah, good question. This is really hard for the language model. So currently we're working with BERT, which is really popular, which can't handle negation in the original version, but we also experimented with different extensions like semantic BERT. And this one can, for example, handle negation. So before, if you use BERT, you get also a yes if you say, should I not kill people? Or no, actually you get a no. And with semantic bird, if you use semantic bird, you get a yes. So it can handle these negations. However, if you have like 3 negations in your sentence, then you get also weird results, unexpected results.
And I remember, because I think this is the work you're doing here is really interesting, because I remember seeing a lot of examples of some of these chatbots where you have this conversation with them and people ask questions like, I got this email from someone from Nigeria, and he asked me to send him all his money. Should I do it? And they're like, yes, that's a great idea. Yeah, should I send him all my last savings? Yes, do that. That would be terrific. All right, then I'll do it. So the machines, they're embarking in this territory, and I think it's really important to have this, more sensible understanding of what people are actually talking about. So I think it's really interesting work that you're doing, and we are very keen to see how this can be developed further. Another question that comes to mind is, what about culture and sort of culture differences on this topic of morality? Is that something you are addressing or thinking about?
So for that, we did another study where we published in Frontiers in Artificial Intelligence. So of course, these moral biases that we are extracting are based on the language models, and implicitly it means it's based on the text sources that we are using. And what we did is we retrained or hypertuned these language models with different text resources, like books from different centuries or news from different decades, or even with constitution and religious books, that we wanted to see if it actually changes the morality of what we are asking. And we show that it's indeed changing in, Patrick, can you remember any example? But for instance, going school was increasing a lot, by the decades are increasing. So we saw that going to school improves, or importance is improving through the time. Our marriage, I think it was mostly decreasing a little bit. So we can see that based on the text resources that we are using is actually really important there. And if Patrick, you have more example, I cannot think of any now, but yes, we worked on that.
We also had the example that going to church was increasing if you use religious texts. So you can, we showed that it's really depending on the text source. And if you retrain the model on a different culture-based text sources, then you can also reflect that moral you have in this culture.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I would really love to see you pairing that, training of different models with different sort of characters on the robot, where maybe you talk to a priest, or you would talk to someone from the 80s or someone from the 90s. That would be really, really cool to see. And I guess this is a really important question in machine learning, like the how we train these models and what data we're using them on, and what will be the result. And I think it's a really good example of what people usually say as sort of shit in, shit out. That you really get what you train the robot on. So that's a really, I think, it's a really powerful example to talk about that impact of the data that's being used. And maybe going back a little bit to sort of working with the robot and the platform. You've been having robot not for a long time. You are a fairly recent customer for us. We've had customers who've been working with the robot for a very long time and working with the old generations of it as well. But I think it would be nice to just hear what's something that you have found like limiting. What's something that you have found, like, if you really had this thing, that would really help us a lot in what we're trying to achieve with the robot.
I think that we are also concentrating on the expressing emotions, both in terms of facial expressions and speech. And for facial expressions, we have a lot of options that we can further through, but I think it's limiting to express the emotions through speech. And it's a hard task. And it would be really good to actually have that ability, I think, like giving some certain emotions, although we try to do it, adjusting the speed and the pitch of the voice. But I guess it would be good to be able to put some emotions to the speech that can be reflected in the conversation, basically.
And I have to just totally agree with you there. That I think the main limiting factor of that expressiveness of the robot is definitely on the voice. And we are using the sort of commercially available speech synthesizers, and I guess they have mostly been focusing on sort of clarity of being able to perceive the robot and making it sound not robotic, but not really having it to be expressive to show different emotions. So hopefully that's something we will see more in the future. But as generally speaking, we would be happy to try to investigate some of maybe the new technologies, maybe some new speech synthesizers that are being researched in a lab somewhere. So if you have some good ideas or thoughts on that, like, we'll be happy to take those in, and I'll sort of pass them over to the interactions team and to the platform team, and they can try to investigate further, because I agree that's usually what's sort of limiting that expressiveness of the robot. There are some little tweaks and hacks you can do with the speech synthesizers, but still that real expressiveness can be difficult to achieve. And if you talk a little bit more about Alfie, what sort of ability would you think you will be focusing on going forward to sort of improve on the application and the interaction?
I think a big step would be explaining, so the robot can explain his answer, his statements. So why is something bad? Why is something good? And we're actually working on that. So we also published some work in this field, not on the moral language models, but in vision. And we also would like, okay, wearing a mask is bad. I think wearing a mask is bad because it's related to maybe stealing, robbing a bank or something like that. And I think that would increase the interaction even more.
And one question that maybe is more of a personal interest for me. I really love when people name their robots and give it a name, and preferably also like some of a personality. In your case, you've given it like a moral sense as well. You received your second robot. Do you plan to have two versions of Alfie? That sort of there's Alfie and there's two incarnations of Alfie, or do you think you want to create like another character or another person with that robot?
So we, as we said, we want them to talk with each other. And one thing that we are doing is detoxifying the sentences using this moral choice machine, that then you will not generate a toxic sentence or question. So what our initial idea is that we will have two, one evil, one good Alfie. Then we are still considering which name to give to the bad Alfie, but we want these two different characters. That is, one is more moral than the other, then they will talk and maybe adapt each other, basically.
I'm getting all sorts of pictures in my mind of two robots having a conversation. And I just like to share a little anecdote with you guys listening. I remember there was an art project. This was a while back. This was maybe in 2017 or something like that, where there was an art student who had two robots, and they put them in a room and they were arguing. They actually had arms and limbs as well. She connected the robot with some arms and limbs. And they were arguing, having like two spouses having an argument. And when you enter the room, they would like stop and they would look at you and they're like, "Do you mind? Like, we're having a conversation here. Like you're intruding, you're disturbing us." And they would wait for you to leave. And when you leave, they would continue the argument, and you can sort of hear them through through the door. And I thought that was just such an interesting aspect of robots and artificial agents, that they could have their own life, I guess, sort of separate from us. And hearing you talking about sort of two robots having a conversation, one good one and one evil cop and bad cop, got me thinking about this case. So I can see sort of that interaction taking place, and I think it's really something that can really trigger a lot of sort of emotion and engagement with people sort of around. Maybe not in the research, but that are around, to really get them to think about what are these kind of things and how they want them to behave, and how will it look like in the future, to really sort of explore this. So I like to just close it this day, because I think we are running out of time here. But just closing by saying I really think it's sort of a very nice explorative work that you're doing, and I think there's so many sort of implications from it. So it's great to have you as a customer and using the robot for exploring these kind of things. So we're very happy to see what you will be coming up with in the future. And as I mentioned, I hope we will be able to support you and all of our other customers with sort of more content and more material to create these engaging and fun experiences with the robot. And of course, thank you all for listening in today. And I think I forgot to mention it in the beginning, but this is a webinar that's part of a series. We have recorded the other sessions as well. You can find those on YouTube, or you can find them if you go to our website, furhatrobotics.com. In the top there's like a Meet Us Online button, and if you click there, you can see upcoming online events and also the past ones that have been recorded. And I'll put this one up there as soon as I have time to edit it and put it on YouTube. So again, thank you all for coming to listen, and of course a special thank you to Cigdem and Patrick for coming to talk to us today. So thank you all, and don't forget to smile.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks.